Bradford and Brooks show. Mr. Brooks is out. This is Stephanie. I'm filling in for him to run the board. And we have Margie in the house. And we also have Sheri Donahue, who is the Kentucky auditor. She's waiting for Kentucky auditor, I should say.
Right, not yet.
Be positive. Might as well.
I like that. Yeah.
Good morning to you folks.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, Sheri, it's great to have you here this morning, and you brought the sunshine with you, and we're happy to see that after the nice rain we had, so we were the best of both worlds. Sheri, I know you're running for state auditor as the Democratic nominee. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. It's wonderful to be here in Bardstown. We've been here several times, and I love coming to Nelson County and to Bardstown. So I grew up in a small working-class town just outside Louisville, and my parents are still in the same house where I grew up. My dad worked construction, and my mom, to help make ends meet, she worked at the Navy Weapons Station. So I was inspired by my mom and by the people she worked with, and I decided I wanted to go into engineering. So in the 1980s, it wasn't a natural choice for a woman to go into sciences like that, but I did, and I went to Purdue, and I found I was one of only a handful of women in engineering, and I have to say, the people at Purdue helped me realize all that I'm capable of, and it's fair to say that if it weren't for them and for people like my mom and my dad, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today as a Democratic nominee for state auditor. But I earned my degree. I came back home. I worked for the Navy for 20 years, auditing multi-billion-dollar weapon systems and managing classified intelligence contracts. And later on, I did some work with the FBI in cybersecurity and infrastructure protection. I ran a national program called InfraGuard of 50,000 people across the country. And then later on, I did some cybersecurity work with Humana. I've been a single mom since my son Ryan was 5 years old. He's 22 now, and he's a UK graduate, and he's going to be heading off to law school soon. So now I am running for auditor.
Well, it sounds like you have a pretty unique type of experience. Why don't you tell us why you think that your unique experience in cybersecurity is what the state of Kentucky needs in their auditor?
Well, I believe that as an engineer, I'm all about process and systems and efficiencies. And for 20 years working for the Navy, I was protecting our taxpayer dollars. And I was making sure that our men and women in uniform had safe and effective equipment to defend our nation. You know, often it required me to stand up to some very powerful and rich people, some of whom have billions of dollars on the line. But I did it. And as auditor, I will stand up to the special interest in Frankfurt. Working with the FBI, one of my proudest professional accomplishments was following 9/11. I developed the process the FBI now uses to coordinate domestic security information. And so I'm very proud of that. We did that as a pilot program here in Kentucky. And then we were able to expand it and roll it out across the country. The FBI liked what we were doing, and they mandated it across the country to all FBI offices in every state. So I know how to manage large organizations. I know how to make systems work. And so with that unique background, with my ability to stand up to people for what's right and protect our taxpayers, I know that I can do that as auditor. And adding into that, my experience in cybersecurity, nowadays, this is the 21st century, and people, when someone's audited, it's not about, ledger books and piles of paper. It's ones and zeros. It's all digital. We have $70 billion in state and federal taxes that go in and out of our accounts every year. That's tens of thousands of transactions, all done by computer. So we need to protect our IT systems, and because right now we can't afford not to protect those systems, because we see all the time that other states, cities, and counties are being attacked. Like Tallahassee, Florida had $500,000 in payroll stolen. Jackson County, Georgia, they were hit with ransom attack with ransomware. They had to pay $400,000 to get their system back from hackers. Atlanta had to pay $2.4 million to undo damage, prevent future attacks. So if we look at the 120 counties we have in the state, if every county were attacked like that, it could cost us over $300 million. So we can't afford not to improve our cybersecurity, because truly it's not a question of if we're going to be attacked, but when. And I can tell you that right now we are stunningly unprepared. Our auditor's office has an IT security audits division, but it's not being run by cybersecurity professionals, and they're not doing any cybersecurity audits at the county level. So whenever I talk with people in the counties, the county clerk's offices, the treasurers, they welcome that help in making sure that our information is protected and our accounts, our money is protected, because that's where people will go after it.
Exactly.
Well, I know you have also talked about the auditing of voting machines, or the improving that process. I think there's a whole list of things that are under that. So talk to us about that.
Sure. So auditing electronic voting machines is part of improving that IT security audit, but it's a very specific issue. Everything we do right now is electronic, and all of our voting has gone to these electronic voting machines, even the ones with paper backups. There are 3 vendors of voting machines that the state uses. I've spoken with a couple of them, and I've spoken with one that provides the greatest number of counties, like 94 counties out of the 120. But the one, like in Jefferson County, there are paper backups, but those paper backups are not used for validation purposes. They're there if there is a contested election and somebody wants to go back and count them. But even if we went to all paper ballots, there's still, hacking, if you will, in elections. I spoke with some folks in eastern Kentucky this weekend in one of the counties, and I don't want to name it, but they used the touchscreen machines, no paper at all. And I was told by a few people that when they went to vote in 2018, when they touched the screen for the person they wanted to vote for, it showed that they were voting for the other person. Now, what that is a miscalibration. So those machines are not calibrated properly, so it can be just 3 or 4 centimeters off, so when you touch it, it reads it as the other person, not the one you're clicking on. So what we need to do is make sure we have resources to make sure that there are people maintaining those machines, because it's about patching. When some of these machines are using operating systems that are 10 or 15 years old, there's a lot of vulnerability there. And I've spoken with Jeanette Sidebottom, the county clerk here in Nelson County. I spoke with her not too long ago. When these counties buy these voting machines, that's a huge investment. And they're not going to buy new machines the next year. They need to decide what they're going to buy. They buy it. And then for the next few years, they're paying off those machines, and part of what they pay is fees for maintaining them. Mm-hmm. So once they're committed for a number of years. And so I need to make sure that those vendors are providing that maintenance, that the people that are doing the programming have been vetted. I've had a security clearance since 1990. I know how to protect information. And so we need to know that they're doing background checks on the people that are programming the machines, that when the information is transmitted, that is the correct information. So there are a lot of things that need to be done to make sure those machines are protected so that our votes are being counted properly, because we know for a fact that there are areas where they're not, simply because of the machines not being properly calibrated. Mm-hmm. And so that's not necessarily the Russians hacking into it. That's just some basic housekeeping, some basic maintenance of the machines. Not saying that the Russians aren't. I think that there are definitely people hacking into or trying to hack into our systems.
But from what I understand, there have been some proven instances of that, of at least them trying to.
Yes.
So that I would assume that means that they would keep on trying.
Absolutely. And that's the way it is with hacking. And whether it's a nation state trying to do it, whether it's one party over another, or maybe a third party we don't know about trying to do it, or if it's just some kid, trying to have fun. We've seen at DEF CON a few weeks ago, they did a demonstration of a voting machine that could be hacked in less than 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Right? So when that can be done, we're at risk, and we don't have, the worst thing that I've come across is county clerks that will say, oh, our machines can't be hacked, we're secure. Well, first, you don't have imagination, and secondly, you're not protecting your machine. So everything can be hacked. And even if somebody isn't on the internet, your information is. If you go to the doctor, if you pay taxes, if you have a driver's license, everybody's information is in the state systems. So we have to make sure that as the state, we're protecting our citizens' information, not just the information, but our tax dollars that are being used to clean up these messes.
What kind of machine do you think that we would need here in the state of Kentucky that would assure the maximum amount of security that we could have for our voting process? I mean, what would we need to do?
The type of machine, I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that we can put some good practices in place. We can make sure we have the resources to ensure that people are properly programming the machines and recording the information, making sure that they're doing patching. So, right now, just for example, Mitch McConnell didn't allow a vote to be taken to go to the floor on requiring paper backups. Those are things that if that happened, then these vendors would be required to have machines that have paper backups. If we had a requirement that you had to update the machines, that you had to update the operating systems, if those things were required, these vendors would have to do it. But without that requirement, they're going to do the bare minimum, which is business. That's what a business does.
So essentially, that's a vote in favor that vendors who won't have to upgrade to do it.
Right. It's a matter of our legislature requiring certain things to be done, requiring validation of the vote. So whether that is a paper backup to validate what's being reported electronically, there are things that can be done legislatively to ensure that we're giving the proper resources.
Given the fact that everyone who owns a computer knows what happens when your computer goes down.
That's right.
I think we can all relate to that. It just seems that a paper ballot is the logical, is logically what we should do. So you would have that paper backup even if it was an accidental shutting down of the system.
Right. Well, and that people are still able to cheat with paper ballots, obviously, but I think it's just more opportunity when you have the electronic, and people aren't going to want to go back to just paper ballots. It's 21st century. They're not going to want to have to go back to that. But as a backup and to be used as validation, not to be just there in case. I would like to see a validation done. And the Secretary of State's office, they do actually perform an audit following elections. And so if the auditor's office was involved with that and helping, assisting, whether it's getting a new process in line for the county clerks, whatever it might be. I don't know the answer right now, but I do know that we need to have an audit done to find out what is the current situation and what can we do. And some of it's going to be talking with other states and finding out what are they doing, what are their best practices. And that's something that as an engineer, I always look at. We do not need to recreate the wheel. We need to find out what are other people doing that's working and realize that we may not know the best way. Somebody else will, and we need to incorporate and adopt those practices.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Sheri, as auditor, you're going to be responsible for auditing public agencies to make sure our tax dollars are being spent wisely. Can you give me some examples of audits that you think would be very important to do and what it could mean to the state?
One thing I definitely want to do is look at these economic incentive packages, things like Brady Industries. Briggs and Stratton is going out of business in Murray. We're losing 600 jobs. Train in Lexington, in Harlan County, Black Jewel. There are so many instances of these companies that have come into the state and they're giving these incentive packages, they're given tax breaks, they're given these bonuses. All that money is taxpayer dollars. They're coming in with promises of bringing economic benefit to the communities, of bringing jobs. And then what it appears is that we have things like Russian oligarchs involved. We have these corporations that are getting these huge tax breaks and not bringing jobs into the state. I would like to audit those economic incentives to find out, are they living up to the promises that they made in exchange for those bonuses? Because I believe they're not. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, right at the present time, I don't think there's any process for doing that at all.
That would be a special audit, and those things aren't being done. And I maintain that our current auditor's office, there are a lot of opportunities for improvement that have not been taken.
Sheri, I kind of find your experience with the FBI very interesting. And can you tell us a little bit about this system that you've developed that the FBI is now using?
Sure.
And what it is and what it does?
So I was on the national board and president of this organization called InfraGard. And it's a public-private partnership with the FBI, again, with 50,000 members across the country, reaching into all 16 of the infrastructures. And so it brings together the owners and operators of the critical infrastructure, which is 85 to 90% private sector, with the public sector. So what I did was I looked at what are all the critical infrastructures for the state of Kentucky, because they're going to be different in Kentucky than they're going to be in Maryland or Texas. And then I recruited people from these specific sectors, and I recruited the experts. And we would have a point of contact in each sector to be that person that if there was something going on in that sector we could reach to, because they had the outreach. So basically, in shorthand terms, we created a network of networks. Again, not reinventing the wheel. So if there's somebody that is on the board of a finance association, a banking association, we would have them as our sector chief for InfraGard for banking and finance. So, for example, when we had some attacks on banking systems, I think it was 2004 maybe, and on Sunday afternoon, Homeland Security had a conference call with all of the state Homeland Security offices, and so I was contacted by them, and they said, give me your banking and finance person. And so I connected them. So on Sunday afternoon, they had information. So he was able then to reach out to his folks in banking and finance and say, this is what we know about these attacks on the banks. And so before CNN got word of it, or they got to their office on Monday morning, they were already prepared with, here's what the government's doing, here's the information we know, and here's how we can protect our banks. So as just a small example of what we can do when we're better organized. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the government saying this is what you need to do, because we know that when it comes to protection, the people are the ones that are on the ground, the private sector, they're the ones that know what's going on. So it's a partnership. Mm-hmm. So the process that I developed and that we demonstrated in Kentucky, the FBI picked it up, and I even had the director of the FBI tell me, what you're doing with InfraGard is not an FBI asset, it's a national asset. And they rolled it out across the country. So I've demonstrated that I know how to develop those systems based on the people that are involved. like I said, when I worked for the Navy, it was about the sailors. It was about our military, and they're the ones we need to make sure that we're serving, not the contractors that are trying to sell us expensive systems.
Right.
Okay, well, we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be back right after these commercials. Okay, sorry about that. Didn't realize that was going to have that little delay there. And go right ahead, Sheri.
All right. Sheri, this is the first time you've run for political office, I think, isn't it?
Actually, I ran for state senate last year in District 36 against Julie Rocky Adams. So,
well, tell us what impelled you to run this time for auditor? I know, other than your obvious accomplishments.
well, I decided last year to run because I was raised that we should always give back and we should always work to make the world a better place. And that's the one thing I've taught my son growing up. At the end of the day, you should look in the mirror and know what you've done today to make the world better. And so that's just something that we live by. And I've had a career of public service. Last year when I was running for state senate, as I was out talking with people, it really affected me just hearing how people have lost faith in our government. And they just feel like it doesn't matter anymore because they're out to get us, kind of thing, right? And so, when I look at our democracy, the cornerstone of our democracy is that people have faith that our government works. Faith that your government cares about you, faith that your government will effectively respond to your needs, and faith that your voices and your votes are heard and counted. And it's no wonder people are losing faith. It's when our government does not live up to its moral obligation to put people first. When we look at things like Chuck Grindle, Matt Bevin put him in charge of our state's Office of Technology. He's a state CIO. He's a friend of Matt Bevin, and the governor got a law changed in order to give him a raise, so he makes $375,000 a year. And when we have the amount of tax dollars going in and out of our systems like we do, and we have a CIO that doesn't even know how many servers we have or if they've even been backed up, it's criminal. And then when for him to say that when the governor was challenged on this, he said, "Well, I would defy anyone to find me anyone in IT that knows more than this man does." Well, after 30 years in the public and private sector, I can tell you dozens of people that are not only more qualified but doing a better job for much less money. So I have a list of names and numbers if the governor would like some. For that kind of corruption,
Right.
if you will. And then we have an auditor who has not brought the cases for prosecution the way his predecessors did, the way Adam Edelin did, the way Crit Llewellyn did.
Right.
We were talking earlier that most people don't know who our current auditor is because in the 3.5 years that he's been auditor, there's been very little that's come out of his office. Now, yesterday there was a press conference about how the pension system has not been transparent. Well, that to me is, okay, we're looking at our watch and we're seeing that the election is 10 weeks away. I better get my name out there. And to me, just saying that it's not been transparent is basically like going to the doctor because your leg hurts. And the doctor says, oh, well, let's do an x-ray. They do the x-ray but find that the machine is broken and the x-ray is just a black film. And the doctor says, well, here's the x-ray. I can't see anything. I'm not saying that your bone is broken. I'm just saying that the machine's broken. So here's my bill. Saying that it's not transparent is not telling us anything about the pension system. The right questions aren't being asked. So that is one thing I want to do. I want to get in there and ask the questions about the pension system, not just about it not being transparent. So and that's one thing. The other thing is the issues that we see with the way our public servants, our teachers are being treated. as though they're being punished for having taken an oath and made a promise to serve us for their careers, and then they get to the end of the career and they don't have that pension. So people just are not being treated right. The government is there. The government is us. The government's not there to line the pockets of the friends of the governor. Like I said, when I worked for the Navy, I worked under 2 Republican presidents and 2 Democrat presidents. And it did not matter what their party was. The president was my commander-in-chief. But ultimately, I worked for our sailors. I worked for the taxpayers to make sure the taxpayers got their money's worth, to make sure our military has safe and effective equipment. And as auditor, that's what I will do. I will make sure our taxes are being used appropriately. And under my leadership, I can assure you the auditor's office will fearlessly search out waste, fraud, and abuse wherever it is and whoever's responsible for it. We have an auditor right now that's the same party as the governor, and it shows. Right? He's part of the problem. So we need to make sure that we get an auditor in there that is willing to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, regardless of what party the person is that's doing it.
Sheri, I know that running against an incumbent is always difficult, especially if it's a well-funded candidate. So tell us what what you are doing to try to contact the voters when you don't have that kind of machine behind you.
So things like this. I appreciate the invitation to come on here today and speak with folks. I'm running full-time. I've been running full-time since I filed in January. And that's 6 and 7 days a week. That's 10, 12, 14 hours a day. It's my full-time thing. And to be honest with you, I see other candidates more than I see my own family sometimes. But that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make because I believe in what I'm doing. If I didn't believe in what I was doing, I wouldn't be walking around with a cast on my foot like I have for the last year, right? They want to do further surgeries, but I've told my doctor it has to wait because I cannot take any time off from talking with voters. We're doing polling. As an engineer, I'm all about what's the data, what are the facts. We look at the districts. We do targeted advertising, whether it's on cable TV or buying spots on KRS radio, which we did, or KSR radio, which we did in the spring. We do digital, but again, targeted. So I'm very much about doing things in a very systematic way. And I go to as many events of parades. We're doing a parade later today in northern Kentucky. And I've got my cane ready to go. I will hobble along. This broken ankle, it might slow me down, but it's not stopping me. It just shows, I think it just shows that I am willing to overcome whatever challenge because I believe in what I'm doing that strongly. But yes, getting out there, meeting as many people as we can. You shake hands, you look people in the eye, you listen to them and what their issues are. When I'm in eastern Kentucky and they're telling me they're concerned about the housing issue. When I'm in Louisville, they're telling me about, the tolls on Riverlink. It's going to be different. When I talk with unions, their concern is about prevailing wage. And yes, I will audit state contracts that have been impacted since prevailing wage to make sure that, well, not to make sure, but I can tell you right now, the consensus is it doesn't save us money. So I will audit it. Is it saving us money? If not, we need to do something about that. So I want to know what people's issues are. When we're in, like I said, again, eastern Kentucky, and we see hospitals that are being shut down. Okay, what can the auditor's office do about that? That's Medicaid and Medicare. That's tax money. So pretty much anything that has to do with taxpayer dollars and that affects our people, you better believe I'm going to look into it. I was in my 20s and I stood up to a huge defense contractor trying to sell a weapon system to the Navy that was going to cause cancer in our sailors. And I stood up to that contractor and I told the Navy brass that it was going to cause cancer, and we did not procure that system. So I know that I'm not going to be afraid of people like Matt Bevin.
That's good as campaign slogan as I've heard. Well, has your family been able to help join you in this effort and getting out, or have you been able to, or do you have a cadre of people that are helping you in this area?
I appreciate that question because I love to talk about the people around me, my support network. I have a fantastic team. I have a campaign manager in Frankfurt, Leo Haggerty. He is wonderful. He's a professional. He's been doing this for years. I have my finance director, John Ramey, who is just fantastic at, he's young, energetic, very bright. I have a full-time call-time manager, Kim Jenkins, and she's right there with me every day, making sure that I'm getting on that phone when I don't want to make those phone calls to ask for contributions because it's part of it. Like you said, we have to do that to help get our message out there. That's how we buy airtime and do digital advertising. On the personal side, I do have my son. Like I say, he's 22, and he's gone out and he's been a surrogate for me. When I've had several events on one day, I'll be speaking on one side of the state, he'll be speaking on my behalf on another side of the state. And it's cute when I hear him say, if there's anybody that knows how much this woman can find out if you're not being truthful, it's her son. So that's really cute. But he supports me 100%. He was on stage as my guest at Fancy Farm. My parents are very supportive. My mom, she is almost bedridden right now, but she will get on the phone and she'll make phone calls for me. We can print out call sheets for her, and she'll call people and say, I'm Sheri Donahue's mom, and I'd like to ask you to vote for her, and here's why I think she's the best candidate. My dad has driven hours for me to deliver signs. So I'm very fortunate. And I feel like the other candidates that I've come across that I've been working with and seeing all across the state, they're like family now. They're some of the most wonderful people I've ever met. Dick Prolopsky is a big support of our campaign. He's helped us reach out to people across the state and other counties. And Martha Lane Collins has joined me on some road trips. And, of course, people love her to death. And I am just so fortunate to have someone like her to be a mentor to me. She has given me such tremendous advice, and she's such a wonderful, gracious lady. So Rocky Atkins has helped us. Adam Elin is helping us. So I just... the support that we're getting is tremendous, and I hate to keep naming people, but I just want to let you know how what kind of support we're getting. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just me out there. Poor John, I mentioned John Ramey, he's here with me today, and he's not getting much sleep either, and God love him. There are a lot of times when we're driving back from Murray, Kentucky up to Louisville at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm with my blanket and pillow in the passenger seat taking a nap, and he's driving me home.
That's always a good feeling.
That is. I trust him.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take another real quick break and get some of the spots taken care of, and we will be right back.
Thank you.
And we are back with the Bradford Brooks Show. Jim Brooks is out today. I'm Stephanie. I'm filling in. And we are speaking today with Sheri Donahue, who is running for the Kentucky Auditor position.
Sheri, I understand you've had some interesting interviews lately, so tell us all about that.
I have. So I was interviewed by the Washington Post about our cybersecurity efforts and what I want to do as auditor with the county governments. I did an interview with Slate Magazine, and they wanted to talk about the voting machines and what we're wanting to do to help protect our voting machines, electronic voting machines.
This is going back to your background.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Right. I have been endorsed by 314 Action, which is a nonprofit that endorses people with scientific backgrounds, doctors, engineers, physicists and that sort of thing to run for office, because that's people that are taking a fact-based approach to things and not just based on ideology and no fact or data to go with it. And so I'm the only candidate in Kentucky that's endorsed by them. And just yesterday, Newsweek picked up some social media information that we were sharing about the wall that is being erected in the state annex.
Oh, yes, the wall.
The wall, right. So, I mean, and that's taxpayer dollars. It's $12,000 in taxpayer dollars being used to build a wall just to keep the Republicans and Democrats separate, and that's just not right.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's a waste of money.
Yep.
What's going to happen next year when there will be a change in the number of legislators on either side? Is it going to be tear down the wall and rebuild another one? And, you know, Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall, Mr. Stivers tear down that wall. So, yeah, we tweeted about that and how childish that is and how that's a waste of taxpayer dollars, and Newsweek picked it up. And especially my message that is just another example of that trust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can people have trust in government when government even doesn't trust each other?
Exactly. Well, Sheri, about the last thing that we ask on this show generally is of a candidate, tell the taxpayers again why you think that you are the best candidate for this job and why they should vote for you instead of your opponent.
I have a very unique background. I'm uniquely qualified. I have a proven record of experience and accomplishment. I have stood up to the strong, entrenched interests for years as a government employee, and I have demonstrated that I know how to make systems work. I have received a lot of commendations from the Navy, from the FBI, and one of my proudest was from the Army. And I'll tell you why, because towards the end of my career with the Navy, when I was overseeing a contract, a Navy contract, we were providing support in Afghanistan for our troops. And it was during the time of a government shutdown. And because of that, they were going to shut down that protection we were providing our troops in Afghanistan. And I went to every bureaucrat I could find in Washington, D.C., and I said, this cannot happen. These are people's lives on the line. And we worked it out. We found a way to continue that protection even throughout the shutdown. 6 months later, and that I was doing my job. 6 months later, in the mail, FedEx delivered a package with a framed certificate from the U.S. Army thanking me for my service and for what I did to protect our troops. I had no idea that they even knew what I had done. So I will always stand up and do the right thing. I don't care who's the governor. I don't care what their party is. I do care who's governor. I'm hoping that it's going to be Andy. But regardless of whoever it is, I will always protect our taxpayers. And I ask folks humbly ask for your support. Stephanie and Marty, I ask for your vote. And our website, we are at DonahueForKY.com. Mm-hmm. It's DonahueForKY. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And we're on Instagram. So I ask for folks to check us out. I would love their support. I've got tremendous support from Nelson County and Bardstown, and I love coming here. I thank you all for the support you've given me, and hopefully I'll be back next year and be able to tell you what we're doing as auditor.
Well, we'd love to have you.
Thank you.
I know that you have made an attempt to come to many events,
Mm-hmm.
and hobbling around with your crutches. I felt so. I've heard you speak at Bullitt. I've heard you speak at at the Pizza Hut.
Yes.
I've heard you speak at the library.
I was there.
And so that dedication is hopefully pay off for you in the end here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with? Any last thoughts on on how they may help you, or again, I know you gave out some of your information, but I'm not a tweeter and one who's very familiar with social media, but is there a way that someone can boost your website or something like that can
Sure,
be
if just
helpful?
share the information.
Yeah, tell them how to do that. Don't tell me, because I won't remember, and, and I can't do it.
But right, definitely just share the information, get folks out to vote. And people need to be educated on who the candidates are. First of all, we need to get people to go out to vote, and secondly, we need to make sure that they know about the candidates. So when you're talking with people about the elections, make sure they understand that we have an election on November 5th of this year in 19. That, yeah, I know there's a big one in 20, but we need to get past 19 first. And if we can get people out to vote this year, if we can get them energized, then that will make a difference towards next year. Because like I said, it's about restoring that faith in our government, and we cannot do that unless people are part of the process. And that means getting out to vote, being educated, participating, go to the website, come to events. When we go out we're traveling all across the state, come out and meet us. We'd love to talk with folks. Because like I said, for so long, politicians like Mitch McConnell and Matt Bevin have tried to scare us, telling us the government doesn't work. And now that they're in charge, they've set out to break it so that it can't work. Commonwealth deserves better, Kentucky families deserve better, and a government that works for you is what this ticket will provide. So I ask for your vote.
And what's your next event that people can see you on?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Tonight we're going to be in Alexandria, Kentucky. We're going to be at the parade. Tomorrow night we're going to be in Bowling Green at Preservation Station. Friday, I think we may be going to the Honey Festival. We're going to be at the, Wolf County on Saturday morning at the parade. We have a lot of events every day. Labor Day, we're going to be at the zoo in Louisville for the Labor Picnic, and in Lexington at the Labor Picnic. So every day it's someplace different.
Wonderful. And again, what is your Facebook and Twitter handle so that people can find you?
So Facebook, it's Donahue for KY.com. It's DONAHUEFORKY. Twitter, we're Sheri Donah, DONAH. On Facebook, it's Sheri4KY. It's SHERI, the number 4 and KY, and the same for Instagram.
Wonderful.
So, with your son helping you, maybe you can mobilize the young people to get out and vote, because
yes,
this should be very much up their alley, since they're all about electronics and the use of the media.
Right, and they understand that. As soon as I start talking about cybersecurity, they get it. I don't have to explain it. So, and that's good. And hopefully they'll get out there and help us out. Because when we start doing these events, when we start auditing these county clerks' offices, we're going to need people that understand IT, part of the community, to help us to improve their county cybersecurity. So we'll count on them.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much again for coming in and talking to us today, and just keep us posted.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity. I look forward to coming back to Bardstown very soon.
Well, thank you very much. And Margie, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, other than the fact that I think Sheri's done a wonderful job in explaining some complicated things.
Absolutely.
And I would encourage everyone to get out and vote, period, in November the 5th. Our record of participation in voting is like an abysmal 30-something%, and that is just really unacceptable.
Yeah, that's very low.
People need to be involved and to get out there, and whether you vote the way I want you to vote or not, we need people to get out and vote. I mean, that's how the democratic process works.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, thank you. And once again, we've been speaking with Sheri Donahue, Kentucky Auditors. That's who she's running for, is Kentucky Auditor. And be sure to go out and say hello and pass along her information.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming in. And you've been listening to the Bradford Brooks Show. And this has been Stephanie Newton filling in for Mr. Brooks.